2016 Republican presidential candidate Senator Ted Cruz, who, by the way, now has leapt into third place in the latest Fox News poll. He is only one of three candidates now in double digits, as we put it up on the screen. Senator, this is now a growing trend. You have been now increasing your numbers in the polls. You also had an incredible quarter in terms of donations. What is going on? This is obviously now a pattern. Things have changed for the better. Why do you think that's happened?
Well, Sean, I'm very encouraged by the momentum we're seeing. Historically, in the Republican primary, there have been two main lanes, a moderate lane and a conservative lane. And in past cycles, the moderate lane, there's been a consensus choice early on, and that person has all the money. And on the conservative lane, nobody's had any money, and we've fought like cats and dogs and splintered the vote. That's how the moderate wins the nomination and then goes and loses the general. Well, this cycle, that whole thing is flipped. It's backwards. The moderates, that lane is crowded as all get out. They're fighting like crazy. And on the conservative side, what we're seeing is conservatives uniting behind our campaign. You look at the two candidates who dropped out, Scott Walker and Rick Perry, both very good men, good governors. They were competing in the conservative lane. And what we're seeing every day is more and more conservatives uniting, saying we don't need another establishment candidate to lose the race. We need a strong conservative who will stand up and take on Washington. I think that's why we've got the incredible momentum we've got right now.
All right, let me ask about what you just heard from the president. I mean, he's sat in the pews of right for 20 years, lectures Christians repeatedly now, horrible deeds done in the name of Christ, and bends over backwards on the issue of Islam. How do you interpret this president? Add to that the Iranian deal, which is, to me, a matter of madness and insanity. What do you make of it?
Listen, the far left has always had a strong anti-American streak, and it's always had an antipathy for Christians. That is true of the far left. It's been true from the very beginning. And so, you listen to Reverend Wright's sermons. They're stomach-turning, but they actually reflect the views of the hard left. Obama was 4 years ahead of me at Harvard Law School. And I've described Obama as the perfect Harvard Law School president, because he reflects the views of the elite academy. Now, when Obama and I were both students there, this is not an exaggeration, Sean, there were fewer professors on the Harvard Law School faculty who were Republicans than there were communists. More professors, if you asked them, would say, I'm a Marxist. That's the world Obama came from. And if you look at the elite academy, if you look at the far left, they view America's role in the world as fundamentally illegitimate. You listen to what Jeremiah Wright is saying. Americans' foreign policy, in their view, has been wrong. It is oppression. It is hegemony. Now, you and I both know that is utter nonsense. America has been an incredible force for good in this world. No nation in the history of the world has spilled more blood or treasure for freedom. And yet the far left, out of which Barack Obama arose, despises American leadership in the world. If you want to understand where leading from behind comes from, it is from those fever pitches of the far left that believe America's leadership in the world is wrong. And that's why the world has gotten so dangerous with America no longer leading.
60% of Republicans feel betrayed by Washington Republicans. You're not included in that list. And those predictions that your filibuster would lead to a disaster in 2014, that never materialized. Do those Republicans deserve that label, betrayed? That is a severe term.
Well, it is, but the problem is Republican leadership keeps making promises to the American people, and then they violate those promises. What I have urged leadership in both the House and Senate to do is simply do what we said we would do. We campaigned and said we would fight to stop Obamacare. How about we do it? We campaigned saying we would fight to stop President Obama's unconstitutional executive amnesty. How about we do it? We said we'd stop taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood. We said we'd stop this catastrophic Iranian nuclear deal. How about we do it? And every time I stand up and fight against Obama and for the priorities we promised the American people, do you know who's fighting on the other side? It's not even Obama. It's leadership in the Republican Party who are fighting to fund every one of Barack Obama's priorities. That's why the American people feel betrayed.
It's inexplicable to me. Why then make the promise if then they're going to, and then attack the guy that's trying to make, keep the promises that all of them made? Why? It's like you've become a pariah among Republicans for just attempting to keep a promise. What has happened there? That things have gotten so distorted that they have lost touch this way.
Well, but it's not about me. It's not about any one person. It's about the American people. I'm trying to give voice to the frustration of the American people, and leadership looks down on the voters who elected us. That's the divide, and what they don't like is anyone who stands with the American people and says, it's a very simple message. Let's do today what we said in September, October, November of the election year we would do. I spent 2 months at the end of November, end of 2014, traveling the country with Senate candidates all over the country. I think I slept in my own bed 4 or 5 nights in those last 60 days, campaigning to win the Senate. And I stood next to Senate candidate after Senate candidate who promised, give us a majority, retire Harry Reid, and we will stand and fight. And here's the problem. Republican leadership, not only do they not want to fight, but they are fighting to fund Obama's priorities.
Do those senators
Every
want to
single
fight?
one of Obama's
Do
priorities.
those people that made those promises, do they stand with you? Or have they been co-opted already?
Leadership can be very effective wrapping people in their arms. I sure hope we see more Republicans standing up and just doing what we said we would do.
All right, stay right there.
It's interesting.
Go ahead.
I was saying I'm traveling right now through Iowa. We're doing a barnstorming tour. We do town halls all over the state. And I ask people, I say, we were told in 2010, give us a Republican majority in the House and things will be different. Millions of us rose up. We won a majority. Very little changed. Then we were told the problem was the Senate. We had to retire Harry Reid. Millions of us rose up. And I ask people in town halls all over Iowa, in 10 months of Republican control of both houses of Congress, what on earth have they accomplished? Now, every town hall I've ever done, the answer is the same. People call out absolutely nothing. And, sadly, Sean, the answer is worse than nothing. It would have been better if they'd done nothing. What, in fact, they've done, right after the election, Republican leadership came back, joined with Harry Reid, passed $1 trillion omnibus bill filled with pork, filled with corporate welfare. Then they funded Obamacare, then they funded amnesty, then they funded Planned Parenthood, and then Republican leadership took the lead confirming Loretta Lynch as Attorney General. Every bit of that is exactly what Harry Reid, the Democrats, would have done. That's why people are so frustrated.
We'll have more with Senator Ted Cruz right after this break. 2016 GOP hopeful, Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, is this good or bad?
Oh, listen, I like Donald Trump and I like Jeb Bush. The way I'm not going to get in the middle of their shooting back and forth, the way I've been conducting my campaign, I think the American people could not care less about politicians bickering like children. I think they're interested in real and positive solutions to the problems in this country. It's one of the reasons that the first 2 debates, the moderators have tried to turn them into food fights. I've stayed out of it, said, look, I'm not interested in tearing people down and engaging in personal insults. Let's focus on how we bring back jobs and economic growth, how we defend the Constitution and restore America's leadership. That's what the American people are looking for.
Let me ask, there's a lot of, the reporters in this country will say there's chaos in the House. I actually think this is an opportunity for the House, with John Boehner now out. Paul Ryan's name keeps getting mentioned a lot, but a lot of conservatives don't like his position on immigration. I know you feel passionately about immigration, sanctuary cities.
Yeah.
Tell me about that, but also tell me, who would you like to see as Speaker? We have Newt Gingrich coming on next. Would you like to see him as Speaker?
Well, look, I think very highly of Newt. I think he's brilliant and is a great strategist, and then Newt is a friend, someone who I visit with often. In terms of who the House should select as a Speaker, I've very deliberately stayed out of that. I think that's a decision for the House Republican Conference. I have, however, laid out the characteristics that I think the next Speaker should have. I think the next Speaker should be a strong conservative. And most importantly, the next Speaker should be committed to honoring the promises we made to the men and women who elected us. You and I were talking just a few minutes ago about the great gulf there is because people make promises on campaign day and they don't follow through. And Sean, let me give an example of that in the presidential context. In the presidential race, every presidential candidate is saying, vote for me and I will stand up and fight Washington. Well, the natural next question is, okay, when have you ever fought Washington? And, you know, you think back to 2013 when millions of Americans rose up against Obamacare. I was proud to lead that fight. And of the other 10 people on that debate stage, where were they? None of the other folks there led in any meaningful way. You think about 20...
Yeah, but there's an inordinate fear that has rendered them impotent. They seem unwilling to use their constitutional authority, even to stop something that they all declared was illegal and unconstitutional, an executive order on amnesty, or to defund Planned Parenthood, or to defund Obamacare, or the aspects that they could defund. All the president, all the Democrats have to say is, whoops, we're going to blame you for shutting down the government, and they surrender.
Right.
So doesn't the next speaker have to be willing to allow the president to shut down the government if they fund every other aspect of the government but his special priorities?
We shouldn't have a shutdown, but the situation is Republican leadership has promised we'll never, ever, ever have a shutdown. And Obama said, aha, I have a magic key. All I have to do is whisper the word shutdown, and Republican leadership will surrender and run for the hills. So on every policy issues, he says fund all of Obamacare or I'll shut the government down. And Republican leadership says, great. He says fund amnesty or I'll shut the government down.
Well, that's my
same
point.
thing on Planned Parenthood. Same thing on Iran.
But when the president...
So we've got to be willing to stand our ground.
When the president will literally defy the law and the laws of Congress. For example, we have all these sanctuary cities set up across America.
Yeah.
Why did I always think that was illegal? That the president's executive order is illegal? You've spoken out about these things recently.
That's exactly right. The Senate next week is going to vote on legislation that I introduced along with a number of other senators, including Iowa's own Chuck Grassley, to end sanctuary cities, to strip all federal funding of any city that defies federal immigration law, and to pass Kate's Law, the legislation that I introduced that provides for a mandatory minimum prison sentence of 5 years for any aggregated felon who enters illegally. You know, it's the legislation named for Kate Steinle, that beautiful young lady murdered by an illegal alien in San Francisco, a sanctuary city. I'm glad we're voting next week. But, you know, Sean, we're going to vote on it, and almost surely there'll be a party line vote. The Democrats will vote no. We'll get some clarity on that. The Democrats, it'll be clear where they stand. But, you know, I have a question. Just 2 weeks ago, we passed a continuing resolution. Why wouldn't Republican leadership put sanctuary cities legislation and Kate's Law on a continuing resolution and put it on Obama's desk and force him to decide, does he shut the government down in order to maintain sanctuary cities?
Well said. Senator, congratulations. You had a big jump in the polls in this latest Fox News poll. You're now in double digits. We'll continue to watch your progress and see you out on the campaign trail. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Sean, and the momentum is incredible. People keep going every day to tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org, contributing, volunteering, and I'm really encouraged at how many conservatives are coming together to turn the country around.
All right, Senator, we hope so. We need to turn the country around.